Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. So today's very, very, very special guest is ABBY WALLACH. ABBY is an award-winning beauty and media entrepreneur with over 25 years of experience. She is currently the co-founder and CEO of Scentinvent Technologies, a fragrance and beauty innovation company that is re-engineering the way consumers use, love, and wear fragrance. She's also the creator of Sparti Scents, the first fragrance brand offering fun-loving, skin-loving fragrances for your lifestyle that are pretty, playful, colorful, and most importantly, portable. ABBY is also the co-host of MouthMedia Networks Beauty is Your Business podcast, where she interviews industry executives, innovators, and experts about the beauty landscape, technology, and trends. ABBY's laundry list of other accomplishments goes you could find in the show notes today. But let me share a little something that I always find interesting as I bring ABBY on today. So I always talk about the value of long-lasting relationships, that relationships are truly the golden ticket to success. That is so true here more than ever. I was recently introduced, and I put that in quotes, listeners, introduced to ABBY through a former guest of Her Success Story named Ben Fuchs, who, if you have not listened to his episode, you definitely want to touch base on that as well. Ben and I were connected through a mutual media company in LA. So LA brings Ben and I together. Ben is currently in Colorado, has been there for 30 some odd years, former New Yorker. At the end of the interview, we chat for a few minutes. He goes, "You have to meet this woman, ABBY. I'm going to immediately do an introduction. I just know you girls. It's going to be a great interview." I said, "Of course, thank you so much." I'm looking at ABBY WALLACH's name and saying, I know this person. So of course, what does any good businesswoman do? We go on LinkedIn and pull up a website. And I'm looking at her profile and saying, I know her. And I'm saying, college, maybe. Grew up together, possibly. Where else? Business, 100% possible. We do a pre-call and ABBY and I look at each other and she goes, "You know me." And I said, "I know you." And ABBY, welcome to the show. You want to finish the punchline?
Oh my God, Ivy, you are so cute. Yes, that was the best. The minute I saw you, I knew that we had met many, many years ago when our boys were at an amazing little jewel of a school in New York City called Manhattan New School. And I knew that you were Bryce's mom, and Jacob, my oldest son, was in class with him. So those early years when we were both raising our kids was the beginning of our friendship. And it's so nice to reconnect with you here today and see you again.
It is so nice. So listeners, as soon as I saw ABBY's face and she goes, "You know me," I said, "You're Jacob." It just came. I said, "You're Jacob's mom." And, I always say connections, we always think are always about the business, but it's the real relationships that mean so much. So ABBY, I know you for, 20 plus years. Can you share with our listeners, how did you get started in all this? I mean, the companies you're building, I want to talk about, and everything you've done in the beauty industry has been so phenomenal. But let's give a little bit of that insight to the early years.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always was an entrepreneur. As a child, I had very big ideas and dreams and visions, and I was always making things up and sharing them with my father, who was a business owner. He owned a catering company and a sleepaway camp, and I was always much more interested in being with the adults in the room as opposed to being with the children. I was fascinated by business. I was interested in what they were talking about. I was always offering my ideas and had visions of what kids would want in these businesses that my family was running. I just had this innate intuitive instinct that I would share with them. And I loved that part of my childhood. It was I was very curious. I was always imagining, I was always thinking, and I was actually acting on it. So I knew from a very early age that I wanted to have my own business, be an entrepreneur, work in a big company. And I always loved beauty and fashion, right? That was my thing. I would sit at my grandmother's vanity, swiveling around. I have her vanity actually in my bedroom today. And I would dream of lotions and potions. She used Clinique at the time. You know, I was a child and I just would dream of making them up. And I actually would. I'd make things up in the bathroom. And I was like, wouldn't this be fun? I just had this innate sense, ability of creation. And fast forward many years when I graduated the University of Wisconsin at Madison, all I wanted to do was be in fashion or beauty. And I tried really hard to get into that business. And I ended up at a very small boutique PR firm called Madeline DeVries. And I was put on the Beauty Care Council for Procter and Gamble. And my very first press release, I interviewed Letitia Baldrige, who was Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis's press secretary. And it was on Pert Plus, okay? Pert Plus.
I remember that.
Do you remember that? And the title was How to Make Your Best First Impression. And I think I still even have that press release upstairs somewhere in one of my early portfolios. And that was the beginning, wanting to be in beauty. I worked on a few fashion counts. I launched Calcaflor, a very famous fragrance at the time at Bergdorf Goodman. And that was how I got started. That was my dream to end up in the industry. But I had a segue. I ended up not in beauty, and I landed a really cool job in working for a producer. It was my best friend's father, Steve Lieber. He did AC/DC, Aerosmith, Beatlemania, and I was actually fired from the PR firm. So I showed up for dinner when I was like, show up in my office tomorrow. You'll come work on the Moscow Circus and the Ninja Turtle rock band. So I did. I ended up working on the Moscow Circus in PR and marketing and advertising in a small production studio, and learned that business and what it was like to run a show tour and be around really cool rock and roll people. And the entertainment world was really interesting to me, but I was still trying to get back into beauty. And I couldn't get that job. I couldn't get the job at Lauder or L'Oreal. There was one job I wanted.
They were tough jobs to get. The beauty industry in New York City is a tough industry.
Right, tough industry, and I kept knocking on doors, but I couldn't get that job. I wanted to be in special events and, you know, plan all the cool parties, and it was very glamorous in my mind at 22 years of age, but I didn't get that job. I ended up getting that job at Showtime Networks, and that took me in a completely different direction. So for 20 years, I spent in the entertainment industry, planning live events around the country, original programming, comedy, entertainment, boxing, you name it, did the entire scope of media and live event production for the network, and learned that business. And it was the cable business at the time, right? I was in cable, but it was also entertainment. Super cool. And then from there, I ended up working for the Nederlanders as an executive producer. I went out to Hollywood. I represented Gladys Nederlander as her EP, doing film and television, packaging, pitching, doing all kinds of cool stuff. But I still had this yearning to be back in the beauty business.
You were determined.
Yeah.
No matter wherever it deviated, whatever life deviated, you brought it back.
I did bring it back, and it goes back to your whole point about relationship building, because throughout my entire journey, every job or position I had, whether I made it up or I was hired or wherever, I always reconnected with people from my past. And I valued that so much, because it's always the people that you learn from. It's always about the relationship. It's about the connection and the storytelling. So fast forward, I'm in Hollywood, had a great time, did that EP gig, moved back to New York. We were actually there for Steven, my husband, is plastic surgeon, and he was training out there. So I hopped on the bandwagon, did the Hollywood thing, had the time of my life, would drive 2 hours from Newport Beach all the way up to Hollywood for meetings all day at the studios. I'd pitch my heart out and head back to Newport Beach. Jacob was 1 at the time, actually.
Oh, wow.
And I would drop him at this little daycare center. I didn't even care. I was like, here's my kid. I got to drop off my husband and go to Hollywood. That's how determined I was. And I loved it. It was great.
And so you eventually came back to New York.
So we came back to New York, and I lived on 86th Street near you.
Right.
And I met an awesome woman who was the beauty editor at InStyle magazine. And we connected and we decided, we met in the sandbox in Carl Schultz Park, and we decided that we were going to create a makeover show together. And we did. We created a makeover show. We sold it to VH1. This is back a really long time ago. And it was based on this article she created called 135 Best Beauty Buys, which was a curation of beauty products in the magazine that you could actually tear the pages out and then go shop off of. The internet had not started yet.
I was going to say, yes, it has not. And I know exactly what you're talking. I see those pages before me as you're talking.
So we actually turned that into a very cool brand. I've had a few startups, to say the least. It was called Beautiful Stranger. We would go out. You may remember this, Ivy, because I was running it when I was at Manhattan. So we would interview cool people on the street, find out what they were wearing, and make them shoppable. This is in the early days of the internet. I started in 1999. It launched in 2006. I ran it until 2011, and we were YouTube's first partner back in that day. We were YouTube's first partner. We were partners with AOL. Disney was our big distributor.
Nice.
It was a really exciting moment in the media world to connect on the internet. Affiliates didn't exist. Content and commerce didn't exist, but we had a vision. And the vision was from this article that Melissa had created. So we interviewed all the beauty industry people like Frederick Fekkai and Olivia Chantecaille, all these amazing, everyone rallied behind it. We were the first to put them on the internet. So fast forward.
And what I'm hearing when you say is we had a vision.
Yes.
And that's so often where things start, is you have to have a vision. You have to see and believe what is possible.
You have to believe, you have to see it, and you have to be so focused on your vision that you won't let anything stand in your way. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know what the quality is called. People say it's tenacity, perseverance. I say it's a lifestyle, and it's something that you love with like your heart and your soul, and it's a passion that runs so deep that nothing will take you off that path until you get to where you want to go.
And it's showing up that way 100% every day.
It is, totally. I mean, it's showing up right in life, whether you're a mom, you're an entrepreneur, you're a businesswoman, whatever you are, it's so much about showing up. And that's one of the greatest gifts. I always showed up, and even if I didn't want to, I would always push myself, no matter what, to show up everywhere, because when you don't want to go and you push yourself, something miraculous always happens. It just does.
It always does. There's this spark that all of a sudden it's like, this is why I showed up. And that light bulb goes off.
Yeah.
So share a little bit how now, where did Scentinvent come to play today, and Sparta come to play today? How did this develop, especially after this amazing, interesting year we've just been going through?
So Scentinvent came out. So I have a friend and my partner in the Scentinvent business. Her name's Caroline, and we knew one another from the business 15 years ago. And we were always very interested in each other and launching a business together. And one day we were in my kitchen. She happens to live near I do in Westchester. And I was taking out all of these palettes. And wouldn't it be kind of cool if we reinvented fragrance? She had a scent marketing business. Her husband had left her. I was helping her with that. And she's like, that's kind of cool. What do you mean? And we started on this journey about 8 years ago while I was still in Hollywood and TV and doing what I do there in that business. And she was still doing what she did in the beauty sector. But we just had this vision together. What if we could reimagine the way consumers would use, love, and wear fragrance? And we started very small, playing in our kitchens, looking at opportunities. She happened to have a chemist, a real chemist. It wasn't us. When I was little, who had vision, and the three of us together had this very unique thought process that how we could reimagine fragrance for the next generation of consumers. Fast forward 8 years later. Okay. So any true innovation, anything I've ever done in my entire life or career, and I look back even as a kid, I had visions of I wanted to bring Jamba Juice from LA, and 8 years later it was in New York. Like the Body Shop, I found it in London when I was a teenager. I was like, this would be cool in New York, and I got back to New York there's a trajectory, right? Trends start and then they evolve. And if they take off, then they evolve and they grow. So as a serial entrepreneur, those are the metrics that I found over the years. It's just a constant pursuit. And we had this vision, and we were working on many different iterations of products and fragrance innovation. And back in 2016, we launched our first product. It was a fragrance primer. We did a big deal on Home Shopping Network, and the product took off and it sold out. And that product actually made any fragrance last longer. So that was the direction. Yeah, it was really super cool. It's a product that we're going to bring back. We sold out. It's part of our portfolio. But we imagined what could the future of fragrance look like. And that's where Sparti Scents comes into play. And that was really a rethink on putting fragrance in new componentry and developing something that would be unique for today's consumer, for today's customer, something that was colorful and pretty and portable and playful. So super cool, super new, just launched in July on D2C, and it's really taking off, which is really super exciting.
So, in your journey through entrepreneurship, corporate, because you're dealing with big brands, what is, some of the challenges? We always look for, great successful people make it look easy. And I'll say it looks easy. But, in truly building brands, which you have done for 20 plus years, and I'm going to keep it at that for you. Well, for me, I'll say over 25, because I think I probably have a couple of years on you, but whatever. But be that as it may, what are some of the challenges you're a mom with three boys, built brands, a loving wife, a daughter. We talked before we got on to record, Abby and I caught up on family and what's going on. So how have you navigated, and what have you seen over the years?
It's such a good question, because this wasn't a choice for me. This is my life. It's a lifestyle. So when I was younger and I was working and selling shows to the Disneys and working for Showtime and working for the Nederlanders, and I worked with Kermit Love, he was my mentor for many years, Snuffy and Big Bird, probably when we were together at Manhattan New School. For me, it was never a separation. It's not my personal life and my professional life. This is my lifestyle, and I live it. I live it hard. I play hard. I work hard. I work really, really, really hard. I play really, really, really hard. It really is a journey. And I would say, I don't know if you can call it success, but the balance for me was always incorporating my family into my world. So when I was on the phone with Disney, I would have Jacob in the background. I'm like, what do you think of Winnie the Pooh these days? They were always in my world. They always came to my events. We were always backstage at Radio City. I would take them on trips. There was never a separation, except when I went to a full-time job. I was always bringing Jacob. I remember bringing him to Gladys' apartment and meeting Mrs. Guggenheim. He was 2, and he's running around making a mess of this massive apartment on Park Avenue. I'm like, oh my God, Jacob, so there were these moments that I was like, this is my son, but this is my life. I'm a mother, and I was proud to be a mother. It was hard. It was hard to manage it. But I wouldn't change anything when I look back, and I look back at the choices that I've made and the decisions. It was really fun, and it was very hard. It was a lot of work. It's 24/7. No one can say that work isn't all the time. Maybe it would have been better if I separated it from my personal and professional, but I found that very hard. I worked out of my home too at a very early age. And today everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. It's how do I do that? And anyone can be, which is beautiful. But for me, it's a life. It's a lifestyle, and I will be this way forever because I love it. I love what I do.
And it's interesting, I will always say we think it's harder when they're young, but even having adult children. I could tell you on this recording, my daughter has popped in, and we pop in and out. And I've never been a believer in work-life balance in that perfect formula. I've always been a believer in just showing up at 100% and prioritizing different things at different moments.
I think that's great advice. I mean, I think there definitely has to be some prioritization. I heard something very interesting. I'm very into Oprah's Super Soul Sundays.
Yes.
And she was having a conversation with Gail, her best friend. And it was really, and why she admires her. And I really tried to listen to this, especially during this moment in time where we're home. And I still have a 16-year-old. She said that Gail always, no matter what she was doing, when her son would walk in the room, she would stop and listen to whatever it was and whomever she was on the phone with. And that really hit me in the heart because I wasn't that person. I was like, I'm too busy for you guys. You know, I was always busy. And anyone that knows me, I can't talk, I'm busy, but I'm always busy, right? We have to stop. And I really try. I still have a 16-year-old son, and my Jacob is here, who's 25. Michael's in the city now. But I'm trying to do that and just stop and be present when someone needs your attention. It's hard. It's really hard. I feel bad. I don't always give that to my husband, but you know, it's something to really admire in Gail that Oprah admired in her best friend. And That's something to admire because we have to stop. It's hard. And that's why I was telling you about the Kripalu and, you know, the mirror valves to take that. I moved Michael into an apartment the other day. I was so happy to sit on the floor and watch him build a bed. I was so happy.
Absolutely. And, you know, I agree with Gail, and I'm not sure if I did it all the time or not. I can't even think that way. I will just stop and take a breath. And that's so often what I've guided so many clients to, guided my own family to. When I see somebody is, you know, jumping in 1,000 directions, I was like, just take a deep breath and see where the priority is in this very moment. And then we can address it. So Abby, tell me, where do you see some of your greatest successes in all your years of entrepreneurship and building and the evolution of business growth and being a woman?
That's a good question. So it's a little sad, but I never really stopped to say, wow, that was successful. I just don't. I don't really think about life and my professional journey because I think success is defined in so many ways. And I think today more than ever, what does success mean to you? I think it's a very personal question. I think as a woman, I've never, ever, even today, looked at myself and said, oh, I'm a woman, I couldn't do that, or I wasn't given something, because I never thought about those things. I don't know. I had the most amazing men behind me, from my father and my grandfather to my early years at Showtime. I even work with him today, Matt Blank, to Kermit Love, to Bob Nederlander, to my husband. I can go on and on and on about all these men that were incredible to me. And then I can talk about all of these amazing women. I have this, and my partners, you know, from Melissa to Caroline to this board of advisors that I have of the most brilliant, amazing women, from Pamela Baxter, who ran LVMH, Christian Dior Couture, to Debbie Mercer, who was the head of fragrance at Macy's, to Wendy Gottfried, who was the head of beauty and fashion at Saks, to like Lois Herzica, who was a huge lawyer and runs MouthMedia Network. I mean, I could just keep going on and on and on about these amazing women. So to your point, Ivy, it's about the relationships. And that's how I measure my life. That's how I enjoy my life. That's how I measure success, is the people that I support and I do every day, and the people that I care about. And there've been so many challenges along the way. Oh, and I do this podcast and I have these amazing co-hosts, April Franzino and Karen Moon. So there's just so many people that I can say I would never be where I am today if I didn't have the journey and the intuition to build relationships and to value that probably more than anything else. So, you know, for me, that feels successful. Being a mom, because I was such a diehard driven serial entrepreneur since I'm a kid, I never thought that being a mother would give me the most gratification in my life. And then another piece, I will tell you one success that I feel really grateful for in Sparti, the brand. that we're building, which I'm loving so much because it's such a celebration, and I'm such in the entertainment space, and I love to make people feel good in anything that I do, whether it's I'm bringing them flowers or giving them a birthday gift to creating a product and launching it in the world. I love that there is this incredible group of women who've been in the business and an amazing group of young girls who have rallied around Sparti in a way that I could have only envisioned. So there's this community happening of girls all over the country that are cheerleaders and dancers, and I have these college ambassadors that I love. Remember, I have 3 boys. Right. I have like 200 girls that I talk to all the time. I'm on text with, and I'm mentoring them, and I'm advising them, and they're calling me about their education and what their majors should be. To me, that is success. That feels so good for me in my life that it's how do you measure that, right? And then my friends, oh my God, I have more girlfriends starting businesses, and they call me all the time. And you know what? Not only do I save them money because I tell them what to do, because I know, because I've had so many challenges and ups and downs in my career, but it's so gratifying that I can just help them. And it's nothing to me. It's like a gift. Like if I can spread that knowledge, that to me is the success that I've craved my whole life. What else could I ask for?
I happen to agree with you. And as we wrap up today, it is, I'll never say this is the most successful. I will always say, here are some of the joys that I've been so grateful to have. And, I could tell you about, a lot of terrible stories of running a printing business and this and that. And then I can tell you great stories of people who've made great impacts on me. I'm with you with a friend. I was walking to get a green juice and stop at the bank the other day. And my friend called me. She goes, remember I mentioned to you about that business? She goes, I just want to let you know I put an offer in on the building. I was like, oh, okay. So we're a go on this. Great. What do we need?
I love that.
It's being 100% present where we are. If it's talking to my kids, if it's planning a wedding for my daughter, my son moved into with his girlfriend this week in LA. It's always about just being present where you are when you are. So listeners, of course, every week you hear from me and my guests at Her Success Story. We suggest you hit subscribe so you don't miss the great episodes that come into your inbox every Monday morning. And as important as that, if not more important, take a moment and write one thing that you're taking away from listening to the interview with Abby Wallach today. What was the one thing she shared that made an impact on you? And what is the action you're going to be responsible for taking from there? We're always about creating the movement forward. So thank you for joining us at Her Success Story. Till next time.
Don't need your approval anymore, 'cause I've got mine.